Last November, James Van Der Beek, who starred in the television show Dawson's Creek, was diagnosed with stage 3 colorectal cancer. And even though he is a multimillionaire celebrity who probably has decent health insurance, that apparently still wasn't enough in America, seeing as how HuffPost reports that the 48-year-old actor announced that he's going to be auctioning off memorabilia from the television shows and movies that he starred in to help pay for medical expenses. Now, the items include a necklace that his character gave to a love interest in Dawson's Creek, which is expected to sell for tens of thousands of dollars, as well as cleats that his character wore in the movie Varsity Blues. And this story really demonstrates just how broken our healthcare system is, because if a multimillionaire celebrity can't afford medical expenses, what happens to regular people when they get sick? We know the answer to this question. They go bankrupt or they die. It's why hundreds of thousands of Americans are turning to GoFundMe every single year to help pay for medical expenses, because it is so expensive that you can't not do that even if you have insurance. And because of the for-profit nature of our healthcare system, it's inherently reactive by design instead of being proactive, which means that it's going to be more expensive overall since Americans don't receive preventative care that they need to stay healthy. Hell, a third of Americans don't even have a primary care physician. So what ends up happening is we wait to see a doctor until we absolutely have to, until we're already sick. And as a result, our healthcare costs more money. With regard to colorectal cancer, which is what James Van Der Beek has, this is currently skyrocketing among millennials, in part because of overconsumption of ultra-processed foods, as well as other factors. And this was never something that young people really had to worry about. You turn 45, then you go in for your routine colonoscopy to screen for colon cancer, and then you're good for 10 years. But since rates of colon cancer are going up so high among millennials, a lot of them, especially those with a family history of colon cancer, are opting to start their routine colonoscopies in their 30s. The problem is that they can't get this preventative care even if they want it, because, think about it. If you choose to do something like this that your health insurance company doesn't think is medically necessary, it's going to cost you a lot. So millennials are reporting that it's going to cost around $1,600 to $2,000 even with insurance if you want to get a head start on your colon cancer screenings. Because, again, health insurance companies unilaterally decided that this care is not necessary, even though the science is changing. But if you can't pony up $2,000 to try to detect colon cancer early to save your life, guess what? You're still going to end up paying more for treatment in the long run if you do have colon cancer, because chemotherapy is not cheap, and it's not going to be affordable if they have to remove a precancerous tumor. But removing a cancerous tumor and 6 rounds of chemotherapy is even more expensive. And that's why the system is the way that it is. That's why it's so expensive in part. But instead of just worrying, about getting better in that situation, you also have to worry about how you're going to pay for all of this treatment without going into debt, even if you have insurance in some cases, right? Because even though a lot of us have insurance, it doesn't cover everything, or we have high deductibles to the point where we can't afford to get the care that we need. Some Americans, they just choose to forego treatment altogether because if there's not a high probability that they're going to get better, they don't want to leave all of that debt to their family. And that's reasonable, seeing as how medical bankruptcies is the number one cause of bankruptcies oftentimes in America. Now, all of this obviously could be mitigated if we had adequate preventative care. But since costs are so high, we're kind of forced to just wait until things get bad before we go to a doctor. And a lot of Americans just go to an emergency room because they can't be turned away there. And just to put it into perspective, for all of my international viewers who don't understand what we deal with, every single American has their own healthcare horror story or knows somebody who does. Whether they've experienced a medical emergency and had to ride an ambulance, but the ambulance took them to a hospital that's out of network, which meant that they were on the hook for thousands of dollars. Or whether or not they have insurance that they pay for every month, but the insurance company decided to not pay for treatment that their doctor said they needed. We all have stories like this. And to be clear, it doesn't have to be this way. Every other developed country has some sort of single-payer or national healthcare system where healthcare is guaranteed to every citizen and free at the point of service. But our politicians have collectively decided that the profits of insurance companies matter more than the health and well-being of the population. So they're letting tens of thousands of Americans die every single year, also Aetna and United Healthcare and Blue Cross Blue Shield can profit off of our pain and suffering. And that is not hyperbole, by the way. A pre-pandemic study found that Medicare for All would save billions of dollars every single year, and more importantly, it would save 68,000 lives. In other words, every single politician that doesn't support Medicare for All is complicit with 68,000 deaths per year. And that's the conservative estimate, by the way, because researchers didn't account for people who are underinsured. But things are about to get even worse, as you all know, because of the big bullshit bill. On top of that, Medicaid cuts are going to lead to an additional 50,000 deaths per year, and our health insurance premiums are going to double or triple because Chuck Schumer let 8 Democrats cave to Republicans in the shutdown fight. So now we just have to eat the cost or lose our insurance because of their spinelessness. And I want to be very clear about something here. All of these healthcare related deaths, they're not unfortunate consequences of, a brutal system. They are deliberate social murders by a political class that is choosing to sacrifice human life in service of capital. Period. They're just as complicit as serial killers. The only difference is that they're not actually pulling the trigger. But Republicans are at least pretending to care right now, since Medicaid cuts and, an increase in premiums are also going to affect people that vote for them. But even though Dr. Oz, who Trump appointed as the administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, promises that, they're going to come up with some sort of a solution, he still won't assure people that that solution is going to be affordable. Just watch.
If somebody is watching now worried that they are not going to be able to afford insurance at the end of the year, are you making a promise that the president and Congress will make sure that they can?
I'm promising the president is laser focused on this. It's the main thing I talk with them about. Congress as well is all over this. We have got to find solutions that don't just work at the end of this year, but work for years to come.
He didn't answer the question, in case you didn't notice, because any solution that they come up with is going to hinge on whether or not it enriches private insurance companies. And Dr. Oz is particularly nefarious because this is a longtime advocate for Medicare Advantage for All, which sounds similar to Medicare for All, but it isn't. It is a way to fully privatize our beloved Medicare program, which was already partially privatized in the 90s with the emergence of Medicare Advantage, which is a private system, to be clear. Now, for those who don't know, Medicare doesn't cover everything, so recipients have to buy a supplement to cover the gaps. But private health insurance companies came along and they said, what if we offer you a cheaper supplemental plan? And it exploded in popularity because it sounds like a really great deal if you're healthy. But when you're old enough to qualify for Medicare and you inevitably need healthcare because you get sick at some point, well, then you're shit out of luck because they will deny your claim. They also code patients as sicker than they are for higher reimbursement rates from the government. And even though politicians know that this is what they're doing, know that they're literally defrauding the government, they're refusing to hold them accountable because these same insurance companies defrauding the government are also buying off the politicians that should be holding them accountable. So everything bad about our healthcare system is the direct result of these unnecessary for-profit middlemen. And Trump himself seemed to finally acknowledge this, writing on Truth Social, "The only healthcare I will support or approve is sending the money directly back to the people, with nothing going to the big fat rich insurance companies who have made trillions and ripped off America long enough. The people will be allowed to negotiate and buy their own much better insurance. Power to the people. Congress, do not waste your time and energy on anything else. This is the only way to have great healthcare in America. Get it done now." Now, if he actually hated private insurance companies as much as he says he does, he would support Medicare for All, because Medicare for All would effectively eliminate private insurance companies because it would guarantee comprehensive care and fill in the gaps currently left in Medicare and outlaw duplicative care, meaning that insurance companies could only offer insurance for things that the government doesn't already cover if we had Medicare for All. But I mean, if coverage is all-inclusive and free at the point of service, what role would insurance companies have? The answer is no role. I mean, maybe they could offer coverage for pseudoscientific homeopathic nonsense, but that market wouldn't be big enough to sustain them and they would be forced to go out of business. So if Trump really wanted to stick it to these big fat rich insurance companies, he would support Medicare for All, but he's not doing that because he's full of shit. Instead, he is refusing to extend ACA subsidies in lieu of a type of voucher-type health insurance savings account system where money goes directly to Americans. And here's how Republican Senator Bill Cassidy, chair of the Help Committee, pitched that particular plan.
By giving the patient the money herself, though, she becomes a wiser consumer. And just think about it. If she goes and gets 2 types of shampoo and one's $1 cheaper, she'll get the cheaper one. And the other one lowers their price. Once you give her the power of having the purse, the power of making the decision, she's going to shop, get the lower price. That begins to save her money and squeeze fat and waste out of the healthcare system. That ultimately translates into lower premiums. This is the first step in lowering healthcare costs. Give the patient the power.
And that sounds good on paper, right? Rather than extending the enhanced ACA subsidies, you don't do that. And instead, you force Americans to buy the cheaper bronze programs with the higher deductibles on the ACA marketplace. But in order to offset the costs of those higher deductibles, anyone with a bronze ACA plan under this particular system that they're proposing would then be eligible for a health savings account, or HSA, to help offset the higher healthcare expenses that they'll incur with their shittier plans. That way, the government isn't just pumping money directly into private insurance companies to keep costs down, which is what they've been doing with the ACA. The problem, however, with that type of plan is that you're not fundamentally changing anything. You're just creating an extra step, because people are just going to use their new health savings accounts to buy insurance. It's like how when you're a kid and your mom gives you money to pay the cashier so you feel independent, but the money's still coming from and going to the same place. This is essentially what they're proposing. And when Trump was asked about this likelihood, he basically said, yeah, that could happen. Ryan Cooper of the American Prospect writes, when asked whether people wouldn't then just use the money to buy health insurance, Trump replied, some may. They'll be negotiating prices. Congratulations, folks. You now get to be your own private deal maker with the healthcare system. And with your purchasing power and risk pool of one household, I'm sure you'll get the best price. Ryan is being sarcastic for those who can't tell. But what if you didn't do that? What if you took your HSA and you didn't put it back into insurance, and instead you just used your account to pay a hospital directly? Well, as fun as you'd all have bartering with a doctor and negotiating prices with a hospital yourselves, that money is still going to go into the pockets of big fat rich insurance companies either way, because this plan is nothing more than a backdoor scheme to funnel more money into the hands of insurance companies, because of course that's what it is. As Jake Johnson of Common Dreams reports, Senator Ron Wyden published a report explaining how this proposal from Trump would still be a boon for private health insurance companies and also big banks. Quote, the report focuses on growing GOP support for a proposal that would give Americans money in tax advantage vehicles such as health savings accounts, HSAs, to help cover out-of-pocket costs. Last week, Trump championed the idea in the Oval Office, characterizing the proposal as a way to forget this Obamacare madness. Wyden's report notes that Optum Bank, a subsidiary of the corporate behemoth United Health Group, is one of the nation's largest administrators of HSAs and would be well-positioned to profit from the Republican plan. Shocker. The numerous fees Optum Bank charges, including a $20 outbound transfer fee, a several dollar monthly account maintenance fee, and a $2.50 ATM transaction fee, flow directly out of consumers' and patients' pockets and into the coffers of the nation's largest health insurer, the report observes. Even a fraction of these revenues adds up to massive profits. While some big insurance companies own HSA providers directly, others partner with large financial institutions to operate similar arrangements. Santander, for example, partners with Fidelity. Anthem partners with Bank of America, the report continues. The common theme across these arrangements is massive profits for financial institutions and big insurance companies. Because of course, why wouldn't that be the case? Again, the purpose of our capitalist healthcare system isn't to heal the sick, it's to maximize profits. So any solution that they propose, short of Medicare for All, is going to serve that singular purpose. So let's be very clear here. Any politician, regardless if they're a Democrat or a Republican, who does not support Medicare for All explicitly, they are functionally pro-death, period. They're going to try to propose, some reasonable alternative like Medicare for All who want it, or some turbocharged version of Obamacare with even more generous subsidies. But at the end of the day, if they are not in favor of eliminating the profit motive from our healthcare system entirely with Medicare for All, they're okay with unnecessary deaths, period. There's no reason why the richest country on the fucking planet can't do what every other developed country managed to do decades ago. We can do it. It's just that politicians don't want to do it because, again, their donors pay them to be complicit with our pain and suffering. And to add insult to injury, single payer was almost a reality in this country, believe it or not. We almost had what people in other countries have decades ago. But the move towards Medicare for All, unfortunately and unsurprisingly, was strangled in the crib, as explained by More Perfect Union.
Think universal health care is a modern, radical idea? Well, the US almost had it in 1945. No insurance companies, no surprise bills, just health care for all. But then, the American Medical Association, Big Pharma, and the far right stepped in and dismantled the plan. Post-World War II, Senator Wagner and Murray, along with Representative Dingell, introduced a bill for national health insurance. It was simple, publicly funded, government-backed health care for all. The bill was modeled after President Truman's vision for comprehensive healthcare reform, a national prepaid system funded by a 4% payroll tax that would cover all working people, their dependents, and other needy people. Truman called for the insurance fund to cover medical care, nursing, laboratory services, and even dental care. It had the backing of the president, labor unions, and the public. Democrats controlled the House, Senate, and the presidency. So we were this close to Medicare for all. Then who killed the plan? The American Medical Association. The AMA branded the bill as socialized medicine and un-American, then launched an aggressive and decades-long campaign to kill it. They tasked tens of thousands of physicians with handing out pamphlets instructing them to warn their patients of the dangers of socialized medicine, and then recruited thousands of corporations to spend $19 million on a coordinated newspaper ad campaign. The goal? Kill the National Health Insurance Act and enroll millions more people in the voluntary private insurance plans. So they didn't just attack the bill, they went after Truman himself, painting him as a socialist sympathizer, the worst thing you could be. And it worked. In 1949, a Gallup poll showed that 59% of Americans supported national health insurance. But by the time the AMA was done, that number had dropped to 24%. They turned public opinion, torpedoed the legislation, and helped drive Truman and his plan out of power. But it didn't stop there. For over 100 years, the AMA has fought nearly every major effort towards universal or single-payer health care. From opposing Medicare in the 1960s to lobbying against the public option in the 2000s. Today, they remain one of the top 10 lobbyists working alongside Big Pharma, hospital associations, and the private insurers to keep healthcare in corporate hands. Today, the US remains one of the few industrialized nations without universal healthcare. Keeping America's patchwork system of private insurers was a deliberate strategy to maintain corporate profits.
You know, I honestly could cry watching that. Because we were so close. We were this close. But it slipped away. We could have had what people in other countries take for granted. But at the end of the day, the fear-mongering worked. And they're still deploying the same fear-mongering tactics today, and it's still working, even though the lies that they told us have been debunked and proven false by our own lived experiences. And she mentioned Reagan in that video, but the American Medical Association, they actually hired him when he was still an actor to produce a Reefer Madness-esque record to fearmonger about the threat of socialism that was posed by Medicare, otherwise known as the most popular government program ever. But once that asshole left acting and got into politics, guess what he did? He signed legislation as president that paved the way for the privatization of Medicare that eventually led to the scam known as Medicare Advantage. All throughout history, we've been told by corrupt, self-centered, self-interested hucksters that it was against our best interest to guarantee free healthcare to every single human being. And even though thousands of people die every single year as a result of that lie, they couldn't care less because their pockets are getting fatter and fatter every single year. And as Jen Perlman put it, opposing Medicare for All these days makes you as unreasonable as flat earthers. Because it is the only permanent solution to fix our broken healthcare system once and for all. And the solution has been staring us right in the face for decades. But going into 2026 and 2028, Democrats need to know that this is going to be a litmus test. They can bitch and moan about purity testing, but damn right, I'm going to purity test you. It's Medicare for all or nothing. Not supporting Medicare for all should be career-ending for every single politician, and you should be insulted that any politician would bother to waste your time with some other insurance-friendly alternative like Medicare for all who wanted. Fuck you, Pete Buttigieg. Medicare for all is the bare minimum for a civilized society, and if a politician can't even make that basic expectation and agree that nobody should die if they don't have health care, they can go fuck themselves. If you're too corrupt or too chicken shit to stand up to the health insurance companies, you can kick rocks. We're not interested because the previous generation failed us, and I'll be damned if our generation is going to make the same mistake. Medicare for all, period.